Thanks, everyone. My name is Lena Tettelbaum, and I am a corporate M&A attorney, and I will represent the part of the audience who is very interested and cares about these topics, but maybe doesn't have a direct tie or a direct tie that they realize. We'll just try and get this conversation, not presume viewpoints, not presume much of anything, and just try and learn from our esteemed panelists. So maybe if we could just, if you could each take a moment just to tell the audience what your tie is to the prison system and why you're here.
I'll jump in. So Glenn Martin, founder and president of Just Leadership USA, began doing this work 15 years ago after serving 6 years in prison in New York State, a year of which was spent on Rikers Island. Worked at a public interest law firm after I came out, answering the phones at the front desk, and 15 years later, launched my own organization called Just Leadership USA, which invests in the leadership of formerly incarcerated people all across this country as part of the solution to mass incarceration. And here locally, we launched the Close Rikers campaign about 11 and a half months ago, and I'm excited to talk about that with the audience today. Thank you.
My name is Reuben Jonathan Miller. I'm an assistant professor of social work at the University of Michigan and a member at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey this year, writing a book on prisoner reentry. My work follows people who are released from jails, prisons, and detention centers. I've been working with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people for about 15 years, beginning as a volunteer chaplain at the Cook County Jail, which got me very interested in the lives and livelihood of formerly incarcerated people. And then my brother became an incarcerated person. He's currently incarcerated. And so what my work tries to do is I try to better understand the lives of people impacted by the criminal justice system, in particular, the ways in which they stitch together their lives in the face of some 48,000 laws, regulations, and administrative sanctions that bar them from employment, from housing, from access to their children. And I'm very curious about how they manage to make family and how they manage to make a life for themselves in the face of these obstacles. And this is what my book will be about, and this is certainly what I'll likely talk a bit about today.
My name is Vance. I am the district attorney for Manhattan, which is an elected job. It's a very large district attorney's office, about 600 lawyers. And my association with the prison system is our office does recommend jail and sends people to prison. But our office is also very much involved in trying to balance the decisions, use our discretion to make sure that we are properly balancing public safety with fairness. So we handle about 100,000 cases through our office a year, and I've been district attorney now for 7 years. I've visited Sister Tessa about 2 weeks ago and had a great experience there, and also visited with Glenn, who I know very well. And so what I would say is that as a prosecutor's office in an urban area, and particularly our office, we are very much interested in the voices of others on this panel, people like others on this panel, to help us really ensure to the best we can that confinement is used only when absolutely necessary and as little as possible, and that we emphasize wherever possible in our work supporting individuals who are in trouble so that they don't reoffend.
My name is Vikrant Reddy. I came up as an attorney in Dallas, Texas, which is where I'm from. And I was corporate attorney like you, but in 2010, I helped to found an initiative called Right on Crime. I have views that are a bit more conservative than most people in New York City. I'm from Texas, after all. And the campaign, the initiative, was trying to make the argument that if you are a politically conservative person, you should care about criminal justice reform. There are reasons inherent to a conservative outlook and philosophy that should make you care about the issue. I'm very happy to say that the initiative has been successful in a lot of ways, and we can talk about that tonight. I left the initiative, though, about 2 years ago to take a position with the Charles Koch Institute. And Mr. Koch is one of the famous, or perhaps infamous in New York, Koch brothers.
Good evening. No, good evening. Hi, my name is Sister Tisa Fitzgerald. I'm the executive director and founder of Our Children. I sit here tonight on behalf of the women who, for the past 31 years, I've worked and lived with, who are formerly incarcerated. I also went down to the kitchen on the snow day, and there were 4 women sitting in the kitchen who represented 67 years of incarceration. 4 women. And I ran by them some of the questions that I was asked to think today. But Our Children offers a home and support services to mothers coming out of prison. We do a lot with reunification of children in family or foster care. We also run, Our Children is responsible for the family service program in Bedford Hills, maximum security for women, and also in Taconic across the street. So again, whatever I say today, I've been educated and taught well by the women that I've been privileged to live and work with.
Thank you for that. So prison reform is a very broad topic, and one way to think about it is you can reform the part before prison, why people end up in prison. You can reform the prison experience and make sure that it lives up to its objectives. Or, as we've heard tonight, you can reform the reentry process to make sure that individuals who have paid their debt to society do not have to continue to pay that debt in ways that they shouldn't. So I thought the first question would be to District Attorney Vance. When you think about the process of deciding who goes to jail, if you could think of a prison reform in the stage before anyone ends up in prison, where would you focus? Would it be, well, there's many versions, and you might have an answer already.
There's lots of areas for improvement, but if I had to pick one, I would focus on support for those who have some mental illness. Our prisons today have a high percentage of individuals who suffer from various degrees of mental illness, from psychotic to depressed. And I always remember when I started the job, the corrections commissioner for the state of New York sat down with me, and I said, well, how can I help you, Brian Fisher? And he said, the one thing you can do for me is to do a better job providing mental health in the communities so that it does not become a problem in prison where there's no way that can really be worked out. So mental health is I think one key area. There are many others. Our office handles large financial cases. It enables us to invest the monies that come from fines from those cases in a variety of areas. One area that we've invested $40 million in is the Mayor de Blasio's work on mental health in the city of New York, and it's an area that we will continue to invest in because it is a critical part of the problem that results in people going into prison, coming out, reoffending because they haven't gotten help for the underlying issues that put them in prison in the first place.
Well, and also once they're inside and being able to actually provide the services.
Which is, there really is no facility, I think, in the state of New York that actually is designed to act as a place where a person with significant mental disabilities can process through that. We need that in New York.
But, you are an elected official. How do you, try and be accountable to the electorate without necessarily giving into their worst instincts? And are there ways in which you feel hamstrung or things you would do differently if you were an appointed individual? Although we've also all seen recently that sometimes being an appointed prosecutor also has consequences. So, there's no easy way to do this, but I'm curious how you handle that.
Well, I think actually we've just seen with the dismissal of U.S. Attorney Barrara that having someone else to answer to other than the public can actually be a negative. So that's just editorializing. He was great, and I thought he's a great U.S. Attorney and will be missed. As an elected DA, I don't feel that it affects my decision-making on how to handle cases. I absolutely, because I'm elected, have to have a relationship with the communities that an appointed individual might not have to have. I've got to go out and I've got to understand what the community's thinking, and I need to understand what the community's thinking so that I can present strategies that deal with the issues that they're confronting. And I think at the end of the day, that's all for the good. I'd much rather be an elected individual who should go out and is encouraged to go out to understand what's going on in the communities that I serve. And I think if you're an appointed individual, that doesn't preclude you from doing that, but the incentive to do it is not the same. But in terms of one significant case coming in and whether I was appointed or elected, at least in my case, I honestly have never felt that made the difference. At the end of the day, I think you call it as you see it, and you're going to be judged over the course of the time of the work you do, and not everybody's going to agree with every call on every case that you make. That's guaranteed. But I think most of the DAs, at least that I know in the city here, are call it as they see it, really don't call it as a result of politics. And then, we have I will say just, it's a very impressive group of folks up here that I'm with, and we learn a lot about the alternatives to the traditional way I learned to prosecute when I was a young assistant. We learned a ton by working with folks like the sister and Glenn, and so prosecutors are thankfully at a point now where I think we are really looking for different ways to do the job, and have partners in the way that we approach the job now that we never would have had 30 years ago. But it exists today, and I think it's a good thing.
So just thinking about what communities, the formerly incarcerated can turn to, I think a natural topic to think about is religion. Many people find religion in prison, and there's a reason for that. Forgiveness, redemption, those are very, very helpful themes for people who are trying to make peace with what they've done. But on the flip side, there's also a fear that you have groups of very vulnerable and angry individuals who think the government has wronged them, and there are some religious ideas that are violent and scary. And so my question to you is, what role do you think? How can we help to make sure that religion does the former and not the latter? And what has been your experience with?
I knew I was going to get the religion question.
There's also a woman question. It's coming.
No, I know, but I mean, I also have to say the humanization inside prison is needed. That the women are not the sum and substance of what they did. That's to your point, and it's very real. When you go in there, you meet wonderful human beings who know they made a mistake, and no one has to remind them of that. Also, the issue of reentry. Reentry starts the moment a person walks in that door. And if we really believe that, we would put all of our money and our resources behind that. We don't do that enough. The prison, we don't. The prisons, the fact that there's no access to internet in 2017 to women inside, and I speak with women, sorry guys, but no, that's crucial to look at there are some good things happening in prison, find out what really works and make more of that happen. You talk about barber license. Why have cosmetology courses inside a woman's prison when she comes out she can't get a license? There are things like that go cut across. The religion piece, I have not experienced radicalization in all my years working inside women's prison. I do experience a hunger.
If you look at where people are arrested from, it's the same place where people are released to. Many of the restrictions on people's release, the conditions of release, like, for example, living across state lines, are legal for everybody else. Showing up to a parole officer having had a drink is legal for everybody else. So these are extra legal. There's no codified law anywhere that suggests that if you drink, if you miss an appointment with a parole officer, you should go to prison. You should go to jail. But there are extra laws for this group. And this is something we have to think about carefully, especially as we're enacting new forms of supervision.
Well, I think there's a lot to think about, so I concludes the panel, and I thank everyone for their candor and their thoughtfulness, and turn it back over